Get off this plane right now. You don't belong here with decent people. The words sliced through the cabin like a machete, and every passenger turned to stare at me. I stood frozen in the aisle of the Lagos to Abuja flight, my worn bag clutched against my chest, my 6-year-old daughter Kayamaka trembling beside me. Before we dive into this story, welcome to Stories by Tino. Thank you so much for your incredible support and for being part of this family. We bring you powerful, emotional stories that touch the heart. Please drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from you all over the world. Now, back to the story. The woman who'd shouted at me was draped in expensive Ankara fabric, her gold jewelry catching the overhead lights. She stood in the aisle blocking my path to my seat, her face twisted with disgust as she pointed at me like I was something dirty she'd stepped in. "Madam, please," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "We have tickets. We're just trying to get to our seats." "Tickets?" She laughed, a harsh sound that made Kayamaka press closer to my leg. "How can someone like you afford tickets? You probably stole them." My face burned with shame. I knew how I looked. My dress was clean but faded, mended in places where the fabric had worn thin. My shoes were old, the soles held together with glue I'd applied myself just that morning. My hair was pulled back in a simple style because I couldn't afford the salon. But I'd worked 3 jobs for 6 months to save money for these tickets. Every naira had been earned honestly, through sweat and sacrifice. "I didn't steal anything," I said, holding up our boarding passes. "Please, just let us pass." "Security!" the woman shrieked. "This woman is harassing me. She's probably a thief." A flight attendant hurried over, her professional smile strained. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem?" This beggar is trying to sit in my section." The rich woman waved her hand at me dismissively. "Look at her. She probably has lice. Diseases. She'll contaminate the whole plane." "Mummy," Kayamaka whispered, tugging at my dress. "Why is that lady being mean?" I bent down to my daughter, smoothing her braided hair with a trembling hand. "It's okay, baby. Everything will be fine." But I wasn't sure I believed my own words. Around us, other passengers were murmuring. Some looked sympathetic, but others were nodding in agreement with the woman. I saw them pulling their bags closer, moving away from us as if poverty were contagious. The flight attendant checked our boarding passes, her expression unreadable. "These seats are in economy, ma'am," she said to the rich woman. "They have every right to board." "Then I want them moved," the woman demanded. "I paid good money for this flight, and I won't sit near that." She pointed at me again, her rings flashing. "Madam, all the seats are assigned." "Then throw them off." A man's voice joined in from a few rows back. He was wearing an expensive agbada, his belly straining against the embroidered fabric. "She's right. Look at them. They don't belong on this plane. Probably running from something. Could be criminals." "We're not criminals," I said, my voice stronger now despite the tears threatening to spill. "I'm taking my daughter to Abuja for a medical appointment at the National Hospital. She has a heart condition. This flight is the fastest way to get there in time." The cabin fell silent for a moment. Kayamaka's hand found mine, and I squeezed it gently. My daughter had been born with a congenital heart defect. We'd been managing with medication, but last week a doctor in Lagos said she needed to see a specialist in Abuja. The appointment was tomorrow morning, and if we missed it, we'd have to wait another 3 months. 3 months during which her condition could worsen. "A likely story," the rich woman scoffed. "These people always have some sob story. Next she'll be asking us for money." "I'm not asking for anything," I said, my voice breaking. "Just to sit in the seats I paid for." But the crowd was turning against us. More voices joined in, passengers complaining that the flight was being delayed because of us, that we were causing a scene, that we should just leave quietly. The flight attendant looked increasingly uncomfortable, glancing between us and the growing mob of angry passengers. "Please," I begged, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. My daughter needs to get to Abuja. This is a matter of life and death. Madam, the flight attendant said quietly, avoiding my eyes. I think it would be best if you disembarked. I can help you get a refund. No. The word burst from me. We can't miss this flight. You don't understand. Security is already on their way, she said, and I heard the apology in her voice even as she delivered the crushing news. I'm sorry. But you're causing a disturbance, and the other passengers are uncomfortable. I'm causing a disturbance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All I did was try to reach my seat. 2 airport security officers appeared at the plane's entrance. They were both large men in uniform, and they looked at me with the same mixture of suspicion and disdain I'd seen all day. This woman needs to be removed from the aircraft, the rich woman announced triumphantly. She's disrupting the flight and making threats. I haven't threatened anyone. I protested. But nobody was listening anymore. The security officers grabbed my arms, and I felt Kayamika being pulled away from me. Mummy, she cried out, reaching for me. Don't touch my daughter. I struggled against the officer's grip, panic flooding my system. Please, she's sick. She needs me. They dragged us down the aisle toward the exit. I caught glimpses of the other passengers' faces. Some looked guilty, others satisfied, most just relieved that the disturbance was being removed. Nobody stood up for us. Nobody said a word in our defense. You're making a mistake, I said desperately to the flight attendant as we passed her. Check my papers. I have her medical records. We have a critical appointment. I'm sorry, she said again, and this time I saw tears in her eyes too. But sorry didn't change anything. They escorted us off the plane and back into the terminal. Kayamika was sobbing now, and I gathered her into my arms, holding her tight as the security officers released us with warnings not to cause any more trouble. Through the terminal window, I watched our plane, the plane we'd been thrown off like garbage, taxi away from the gate. Inside were people who judged us for being poor, who decided we didn't deserve the same dignity and respect as everyone else. They were flying to Abuja while we stood stranded in Lagos, with no money for another ticket and a critically important medical appointment in less than 24 hours. I sank onto a bench, Kayamika curled in my lap, and finally let myself cry. How had my life come to this? How had trying to save my daughter's life turned into such a nightmare? My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my sister Ngozi. Did you make the flight? Praying for you both. I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I tell her we'd been kicked off for being too poor? That no amount of hard work or sacrifice mattered when people like that woman decided we weren't worthy of basic human decency. I looked down at Kayamika, her small face pressed against my shoulder, her breathing slightly labored even at rest. She was why I'd endured every humiliation, every extra shift, every moment of exhaustion. She was my whole world. And I just failed her in the worst way possible. Mummy. Kayamika's voice was tiny, scared. Are we going to miss my doctor? I kissed the top of her head, not trusting myself to speak. Excuse me. I looked up to find a young man in a pilot's uniform standing in front of us. His name tag read, Captain Ifoni. He had kind eyes, and he was holding something in his hand. I was told what happened on that flight, he said quietly, and I wanted to give you this. He held out an envelope. I opened it with shaking hands and found cash inside, more than enough for 2 new tickets on the next flight to Abuja. I can't accept this, I whispered, even though every fiber of my being wanted to. You can and you will, he said firmly. What happened to you was wrong. Disgraceful. And I'm ashamed that it happened on a flight from my airline. But. No buts. Take your daughter to her appointment. And know that not everyone in this world is like those people on that plane. He smiled at Kayamika. You're going to be just fine, little one. He walked away before I could thank him properly, disappearing into the crowd of travelers. I stared at the money in my hands, hardly believing what had just happened. Maybe we weren't going to miss the appointment after all. But as I looked at the departure board, searching for the next Abuja flight, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story was far from over. Those people who'd humiliated us, who'd gotten us thrown off that plane, they had no idea who I really was or what I was capable of. And by the time their plane landed in Abuja, they were going to regret every single word they'd said to me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The next flight to Abuja wasn't for another 3 hours, which gave me time to think. Time to remember. Time to feel the full weight of what had just happened settle into my bones. I found a quiet corner in the terminal where Kayamaka could rest. She fell asleep quickly, exhausted from crying, her small chest rising and falling in that slightly uneven rhythm that always made my heart clench with worry. I stroked her hair and let my mind drift back to how we'd ended up here, sitting on a cold airport bench with everything we owned in one worn bag. My name is Adunni, and 3 years ago, I had a very different life. I was married to Chike Okafor, a successful businessman who owned a chain of electronic stores across Lagos. We lived in a beautiful house in Lekki, the kind with high walls, a security gate, and a garden where Kayamaka would chase butterflies on Sunday afternoons. I drove a Range Rover. I had a closet full of designer clothes. I belonged to an exclusive women's club where we discussed charity work over expensive wine. I was living the dream that every Nigerian woman is told to want. But dreams can shatter faster than you'd ever believe possible. It started small, the way these things always do. Chike coming home late from business meetings. Phone calls he'd take in another room. The smell of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts. I told myself I was being paranoid, that successful men had demanding schedules, that I should be grateful for the life he provided. Then I found the messages on his phone. Not just one woman. 3. Maybe more. Messages that made my stomach turn, promises of love and future, intimate details that should have been sacred between husband and wife. And the money. Oh God, the money he was spending on them. Designer bags, trips to Dubai, rent for luxury apartments. Money that should have been securing our daughter's future was being thrown at women who called him baby and my king. When I confronted him, I expected denial. Maybe anger. An apology, even. What I got was worse. So what? He'd said, not even looking up from his dinner. I'm a man. This is what men do. You think you're the first wife to deal with this? At least I'm not throwing you out. But Chike. But nothing. He'd finally looked at me then, and his eyes were cold. You want to leave? Leave. But you'll leave with nothing. This house. Mine. The car. Mine. Your bank accounts. All in my name. You'll be on the street with that sick child of yours, and nobody will help you because everyone will know you abandoned your marriage over something every man does. She's your daughter too, I'd whispered, my voice breaking. Is she? He'd said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I've always wondered. You spent a lot of time with that doctor when you were pregnant. Very friendly, the two of you. The accusation was so absurd, so cruel, that I'd actually laughed, a horrible broken sound. You're sleeping with multiple women, spending our money on them, and you're questioning whether Kayamaka is yours? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. He'd pushed away from the table. Now stop nagging me. I have somewhere to be. Someone to be with, he meant. I should have fought back then. Should have gathered evidence, hired a lawyer, protected myself and my daughter. But I was paralyzed by shock, by the sudden understanding that the man I'd loved for 7 years was a stranger. A cruel, selfish stranger who saw me as property rather than a partner. 2 weeks later, I came home from Kayamaka's doctor appointment to find all my belongings in boxes on the front lawn. Chike changed the locks, the security guard told me, unable to meet my eyes. He said you don't live here anymore. He said to tell you that he's filing for divorce and you should contact his lawyer. Just like that. 15 years of my adult life, 7 years of marriage, 1 beautiful daughter, all reduced to boxes on a lawn and a message delivered by an embarrassed security guard. I'd called Chaik 100 times that day. He never answered. His lawyer sent me papers claiming I'd been unfaithful, that I was an unfit mother, that Chaik wanted full custody and I'd be lucky to get supervised visitation once a month. All lies. All designed to destroy me. My family was in Abaddon, too far away to help immediately. My friends from the women's club? They scattered like leaves in the wind the moment they heard I was getting divorced. Suddenly, nobody returned my calls. Nobody wanted to be associated with a woman who'd failed at marriage, even though the failure was entirely my husband's. I found out later that Chaik had been spreading rumors about me for weeks before he threw me out, telling people I was mentally unstable, that I'd been stealing from him, that I'd neglected Kayamaka, building a case in the court of public opinion before the legal battle even began. Nigerian society is harsh on divorced women, even harsher on poor ones. My sister Ngozi took us in, letting us sleep on her couch in her small apartment in Yoba. She worked as a nurse and barely made enough to support herself, but she shared everything she had with us. I looked for work, but without references from my former life, without the connections I'd once had, the best I could find were menial jobs that paid almost nothing. Cleaning offices at night, selling groundnuts at the market, washing clothes for a local hotel. I took every job I could find, working sometimes 20 hours a day, sleeping only a few hours before starting again. All to save money for Kayamaka's medication and doctor visits. The heart condition had been manageable when we had money and health insurance. Now it was a constant source of terror. Every labored breath, every moment when she looked too pale or too tired, I wondered if this was it. If my failure to protect her from her father's cruelty would cost her everything. The appointment in Abuja was supposed to be our turning point. A specialist who might be able to help, who came highly recommended by Kayamaka's pediatric cardiologist. The tickets had taken 6 months of savings, 6 months of going hungry so my daughter could eat, of walking everywhere to save bus fare, of wearing the same 2 dresses over and over because I couldn't afford anything else. And those people on the plane had treated us like trash. Like we were worth less than them because our clothes were old and our shoes were worn. They had no idea that 3 years ago, I would have been one of them. Sitting in those seats, probably complaining about the flight being delayed, never once considering that the beggar causing problems might have her own story, her own struggles, her own dignity. Karma is a strange thing. It has a way of finding everyone eventually. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Okafor? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. It's Miss Adeyemi now, I said quietly. I'd gone back to my maiden name after the divorce. Who is this? My name is Barrister Folake Williams. I'm calling from Abuja. I represent the law firm that's handling your ex-husband's business dealings. My heart sank. More legal trouble. More ways for Chaik to make my life hell. What does he want now? Actually, ma'am, this call isn't about your ex-husband directly. It's about your daughter, Kayamaka. I sat up straighter, alert. What about her? I understand she has a medical appointment tomorrow at the National Hospital. Is that correct? How did this woman know about that? Yes, but I don't understand. Mr. Okafor filed paperwork 3 days ago seeking emergency custody. He's claiming you're endangering Kayamaka's health by taking her on unnecessary trips, that you're using her illness to gain sympathy and money from people. The world spun around me. That's not true. The appointment is critical. Her doctor in Lagos referred us. I have all the paperwork. I believe you, ma'am. In fact, that's why I'm calling. I did some investigating on my own, and I found some very interesting information about your ex-husband's recent financial activities. Information that I think you should know about. What kind of information? The kind that could change everything for you and your daughter. But we need to meet in person. Are you still in Lagos? I'm at the airport. We were supposed to fly to Abuja today, but... I trailed off, not wanting to relive the humiliation. I heard about what happened on that flight, Barrister Folake said, and there was anger in her voice now. That's actually part of why I'm calling. Mrs. Okafor, sorry, Miss Adeyemi. One of the passengers who had you removed from that plane was a business associate of your ex-husband's. A very wealthy woman named Mrs. Blessing Nwosu. The rich woman in the expensive Ankara. She knows Chike. She's one of his mistresses. Has been for 2 years. And she knew exactly who you were when she had you thrown off that plane. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It hadn't been random cruelty. It had been calculated humiliation, orchestrated by my ex-husband and carried out by one of the women he destroyed our marriage for. Why? I whispered. Why would they do this? Because your ex-husband is scared, Miss Adeyemi. Scared of what might come out if you make it to Abuja. Scared of what a proper medical evaluation might reveal about why Kayamika's condition has been so poorly managed. And scared of the investigation that's currently being conducted into his business practices. Investigation. Financial Crimes Unit. I can't say more over the phone, but trust me when I tell you that your ex-husband is in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that could put him in prison for a very long time. And if you make it to Abuja, if you keep that appointment tomorrow, you'll be in the perfect position to ensure that justice is finally served. I looked down at Kayamika, still sleeping peacefully in my lap. My sweet, innocent daughter who'd been used as a pawn in her father's games. What do I need to do? I asked. Get on that next flight. Make it to Abuja. And tomorrow, after Kayamika's appointment, meet me at my office. I'll text you the address. We have a lot to discuss. She hung up before I could ask any more questions. I sat there holding my sleeping daughter, my mind racing. That woman on the plane, Mrs. Blessing Nwosu, was one of Chike's mistresses. She'd recognized me. She'd deliberately humiliated me, probably on his orders, trying to prevent us from reaching Abuja. But why? What was in Abuja that scared him so much? The answer came to me slowly, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Kayamika's medical records. The specialist we were seeing was one of the best in the country. If he properly examined her, if he looked at her treatment history, he might see something. Something that would prove Chike had been neglecting her medical care even when he had full custody for those 3 months before the courts gave her back to me. Something that would prove he was an unfit parent. And if there was a financial investigation happening. My God, what had Chike gotten himself into? I looked up at the departure board. Our flight would board in 2 hours. 2 hours until we could get to Abuja. 2 hours until I could start fighting back. The captain who'd given us the money appeared in my mind. His kind eyes, his words about not everyone being like those people on the plane. He'd called what happened to us disgraceful. He was right. It was disgraceful. But it was also the biggest mistake Mrs. Blessing Nwosu and my ex-husband would ever make. Because they'd just given me something I hadn't had in 3 years. Motivation for more than just survival. They'd given me motivation for revenge. Kayamika stirred in my arms, her eyes fluttering open. Mummy, are we going to fly now? I smiled at her, and for the first time in months, it was a real smile. Full of hope and determination. Yes, baby. We're going to fly. And when we land in Abuja, everything is going to change. She didn't understand what I meant, of course. She just smiled back and snuggled closer. But somewhere on that plane that had taken off without us, Mrs. Blessing Nwosu was probably laughing about how she'd put me in my place. Probably calling Chike to brag about how she'd humiliated his ex-wife. They had no idea what was coming. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Do you think Adunni will get her revenge? What secrets do you think Chike is hiding? Comment below. The flight to Abuja was smooth, almost peaceful. Kayamika sat by the window, her face pressed against the glass as she watched the clouds drift by below us. I held her hand, feeling the delicate bones beneath her soft skin, and silently promised her that everything I was about to do would be worth it. When we landed, I collected our single bag and guided Kayamaka through the terminal. Abuja felt different from Lagos. Cleaner, more organized, with wider streets and less chaos. The political capital always had an air of importance about it, like the city itself knew it held power. We took a taxi to a modest guesthouse inn that Ngozi had helped me book online. It was nothing fancy, just a small room with 2 beds and a shared bathroom down the hall, but it was clean and safe. That was all that mattered. "Are you hungry, baby?" I asked Kayamaka as I unpacked our few belongings. She nodded, and I saw the tiredness in her eyes. The travel had exhausted her, even though all she'd done was sit on a plane. Her condition made everything harder, every activity more draining. We found a small restaurant nearby that served jollof rice and chicken. I let Kayamaka eat most of it while I picked at my own plate, my mind too busy planning to focus on food. Tomorrow morning was her appointment. Tomorrow afternoon was my meeting with Barrister Folake Williams. Tomorrow, I would start getting answers. That night, after Kayamaka fell asleep, I sat by the window looking out at the Abuja skyline. Somewhere in this city, Chaik had business interests. Somewhere here, his crimes were being investigated. And somewhere here, the truth about what he'd done to us, to me, to our daughter, was waiting to be uncovered. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Barrister Folake. Confirming our meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. Address: 15, Kumosi Crescent, was 2. Bring any documents you have related to your daughter's medical care and your divorce proceedings. This is important." I responded with a simple, "Thank you," and then lay down beside Kayamaka, listening to her breathe in the darkness. Sleep didn't come easily. The National Hospital was impressive, a sprawling complex of buildings with modern equipment and professional staff. We arrived early for Kayamaka's 9 a.m. appointment, and I spent the waiting time filling out forms and trying to keep my daughter calm. She was scared. I could see it in the way she gripped my hand, in the way her eyes darted around the unfamiliar environment. She'd been to too many doctors, endured too many tests. At 6 years old, she'd already experienced more medical procedures than most adults. "Kayamaka Okafor." A nurse called out. I stood, gathering our things. "It's Adeyemi now. Kayamaka Adeyemi." The nurse smiled kindly. "Dr. Emeka is ready for you." Dr. Emeka Okonkwo was a man in his 50s with gentle hands and a warm smile. He spent almost an hour examining Kayamaka, asking questions about her symptoms, her medication history, her daily routines. He reviewed the records I'd brought from Lagos, his expression growing more serious as he read. "Mrs. Adeyemi," he said finally, after Kayamaka had been taken by a nurse to get some additional tests done. "I need to ask you some difficult questions about your daughter's medical history." My stomach tightened. Of course. These records show that Kayamaka was diagnosed with a ventricular septal defect when she was 2 years old. A hole in the wall between the lower chambers of her heart. Yes. We were told it might close on its own as she grew, but it hasn't. Actually, according to these notes from 3 years ago, the hole had started to close. The cardiology reports from when she was 3 showed significant improvement. She was responding well to medication, and there was every expectation that surgery wouldn't be necessary. I nodded, remembering that hopeful time, before everything fell apart. But then there's a gap in her records. From about 2.5 years ago until 6 months ago. And when treatment resumed, her condition had deteriorated significantly. The hole had actually gotten worse. Her heart was under more strain than it had been when she was first diagnosed. I don't understand. How is that possible? Dr. Emeka leaned forward, his expression grave. Mrs. Adeyemi, during that gap period, was Kayamaka receiving her medication regularly? The question hit me like ice water. She was with her father. After he threw us out, he had temporary custody for 3 months while the divorce was being finalized. He told the court I was unfit, that he would provide better care. And did he maintain her medication schedule? I thought back to when I finally got Kayamaka back. How pale she'd been. How weak. How the doctor in Lagos had been shocked at her deterioration. At the time, I'd blamed myself for the stress of the divorce, for the poverty we'd fallen into. But what if it wasn't my fault? I don't know, I whispered. When I got her back, her medication bottles were empty. Chaik said he'd run out and was waiting for refills, but, oh my God. Are you saying he didn't give her the medication? I'm saying that the pattern of deterioration is consistent with someone who stopped taking their prescribed heart medication. And Mrs. Adeyemi, there's something else. According to these records, your ex-husband told doctors that Kayamaka had been having seizures. That's why they prescribed these additional medications. He pointed to a list of drugs I didn't recognize. Seizures. She's never had seizures. I know. Because these medications would have shown up in her recent blood work from Lagos, and they're not there. Which means either your ex-husband lied about the seizures to get medications he didn't need, possibly to sell them. Or he was setting up a case to claim I was an unfit mother who couldn't manage her daughter's complex medical needs. I finished, my voice hollow. Dr. Emeka nodded slowly. I've seen cases like this before. Parents who use their children's medical conditions as weapons in custody battles. It's one of the most despicable things I encounter in my practice. My hands were shaking. Can you prove it? Can you document what you're telling me? I can and I will. In fact, I'm required to report this. What your ex-husband did, or rather didn't do, constitutes medical neglect. It's a criminal matter. The nurse brought Kayamaka back, and I pulled my daughter close, my heart breaking. All this time I'd thought. Her worsening condition was somehow my fault, a consequence of the stress and poverty. But it was Chaik. He'd deliberately withheld her medication. He'd let her suffer to build a case against me. What kind of monster does that to his own child? The good news, Dr. Emeka continued, his voice gentler now, is that with proper care, Kayamaka can recover. The hole hasn't closed, but it hasn't grown either in the past 6 months since you regained custody. She needs surgery eventually, but it's not immediately urgent. With the right medication and monitoring, she can live a normal life until she's old enough for the procedure. How much will the surgery cost? I asked, already knowing I couldn't afford it. Quite a bit. But there are programs, charities that help. We'll work something out when the time comes. For now, let's focus on keeping her stable and healthy. He smiled at Kayamaka. You're a very brave girl. Your mother is taking excellent care of you. Kayamaka beamed at the praise, and I felt tears sting my eyes. After the appointment, I took Kayamaka to a small park near the hospital. She wanted to play on the swings, and I pushed her gently, watching her laugh despite her tiredness. She deserved so much more than what life had given her. So much more than a father who would use her as a pawn. At 2:30 p.m., I flagged down a taxi and gave the driver the address Barrister Folake had sent. Was an upscale area with wide, tree-lined streets and modern office buildings. Number 15, Kumasi Crescent, was a sleek glass structure with a security guard at the entrance. I have an appointment with Barrister Folake Williams, I told him, suddenly very aware of my worn dress and cheap shoes. He checked his list and nodded. 4th floor, suite 402. The law office was impressive. Polished wood furniture, expensive art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Abuja. A receptionist smiled professionally and showed us to a conference room where Barrister Folake was waiting. She was a tall, elegant woman in her 40s, dressed in a sharp blue suit. But her smile was warm as she greeted us, and she had a coloring book and crayons ready for Kayamaka. "Thank you for coming," she said once we were settled. "I know this must all be very confusing." "That's an understatement," I replied. "You said my ex-husband is being investigated?" "Yes. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has been building a case against him for about 8 months now. Money laundering, tax evasion, fraud. He's been using his electronic stores to move money for some very dangerous people. My mouth went dry. Dangerous people. Let's just say that if the EFCC's investigation is successful, your ex-husband won't be the only one going to prison. There's a whole network involved. Politicians, businessmen, even some military officials. I don't understand what this has to do with me and Kayamaka. Barrister Folake opened a folder on the table. Your ex-husband has been trying to move assets out of the country. Offshore accounts, properties in his mistress's names, shell companies. He's preparing for the possibility that he'll be arrested. Good. He should be arrested for what he did to us. He should be. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 weeks ago, Chaik filed paperwork to claim Kayamaka as a dependent for a massive life insurance policy. A policy worth 50 million naira. I felt the blood drain from my face. 50 million. The beneficiary would be him, of course. And the policy has a very specific clause. It pays out if Kayamaka dies from her heart condition within the next 2 years. The implication hung in the air like poison. No, I whispered. No, he wouldn't. She's his daughter. Is she? Barrister Folake pulled out another document. Because I also found these DNA test results from 2 years ago. Tests that prove Kayamaka is definitely his biological child. Tests that he never told you about. Tests that he buried because they contradicted his claims during the divorce that you'd been unfaithful. My vision blurred with tears. He accused me of cheating. Told everyone Kayamaka might not be his. He destroyed my reputation, turned everyone against me. And all along he knew the truth. He knew. And he didn't care. Because keeping you poor and desperate served his purposes better than admitting he was wrong. I looked at Kayamaka, happily coloring a picture of a butterfly. My sweet, innocent daughter. The child Chaik had neglected medically, had used as a weapon, and now. You think he's planning to kill her, I said flatly. I think he's planning to let her die. There's a difference, legally speaking, but not morally. If he can regain custody, if he can control her medical care again. She let the sentence hang unfinished. The pieces were falling into place. Why he'd tried to prevent us from coming to Abuja. Why Mrs. Blessing Nwosu had recognized me and had us thrown off the plane. They couldn't risk me getting Kayamaka to a good doctor who might document the neglect. Who might testify against Chaik. What can I do? I asked, my voice steady despite the rage and fear coursing through me. First, we get Dr. Emeka's report into the court records. That documentation of medical neglect will destroy any custody claim your ex-husband might make. Second, you cooperate with the EFCC investigation. They want to know about Chaik's finances during your marriage, any suspicious activities you might have witnessed. I'll tell them everything I know. And third. Barrister Folake smiled, and it was a sharp, dangerous smile. We make sure that everyone knows what kind of man Chaik Okafor really is. The media loves a good scandal, especially one involving a prominent businessman and child endangerment. By the time we're done, he won't just lose his freedom. He'll lose his reputation, his business, everything. Why are you helping me? I had to ask. I can't afford a lawyer like you. Because Mrs. Blessing Nwosu is my ex-husband's current wife. She's the woman he left me for 3 years ago. And when I heard what she did to you on that plane, when I started digging into her connection to Chaik Okafor and found this whole mess, let's just say I have my own score to settle. She reached across the table and took my hand. We're going to destroy them, Adunni. Both of them. Every person who hurt us, who thought they could get away with it because they had money and we didn't. Are you ready for this fight? I looked at Kayamaka again. Thought about everything we'd been through. Everything we'd lost. And I thought about Chaik, sitting in his comfortable house in Lekki, surrounded by his mistresses and his illegal money, thinking he'd won. Thinking he'd broken me completely. I'm ready, I said. Barrister Folake's smile widened. Good. Because tomorrow, The EFCC is executing a search warrant on all of your ex-husband's properties. And you and I are going to make sure the media is there to document every single moment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Can you believe what Chaik was planning? What would you do in Adunni's position? Comment below. That evening, Barrister Folake took us to dinner at a nice restaurant in Maitama, the kind of place I hadn't been to in years. She insisted on paying, waving away my protests. You need your strength for what's coming, she said, ordering grilled fish and jollof rice for all of us. And besides, consider this an investment in our partnership. While Kayamika ate happily, enjoying the treat of restaurant food, Barrister Folake laid out the plan in detail. The EFCC has been watching your ex-husband for months, she explained, keeping her voice low. They've documented meetings with known criminals, traced money moving through his accounts that doesn't match his legitimate business income. But they need one more piece, someone who can testify about his character, his behavior, his willingness to break rules. That's where I come in, I said. Exactly. You were married to him for 7 years. You saw things, heard things. Even if you didn't realize at the time what you were witnessing, it all adds up now. I thought back to those years. The late-night phone calls Chaik would take in his study. The men in expensive cars who would visit our house. Men who made me uncomfortable with their cold eyes and calculating smiles. The times Chaik would come home with large amounts of cash that he'd lock in the safe, telling me it was just payment from customers who preferred cash transactions. I saw a lot, I admitted. I just didn't question it. I was too busy being the perfect wife, taking care of our home, raising Kayamika. Well, now you get to use all those observations. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., EFCC agents will raid Chaik's house, his stores, and his office. They'll seize computers, documents, everything. And we're going to make sure the media knows about it. Won't that tip him off? Give him time to run. Barrister Folake smiled. He's already being watched. If he tries to leave Lagos, he'll be arrested at the airport. And besides, men like Chaik never think they'll actually face consequences. He's too arrogant to run. After dinner, we returned to my guest house. Barrister Folake walked us to the door, her expression softening as she looked at Kayamika. She's beautiful, she said quietly. She deserves better than what her father tried to do to her. She deserves everything, I replied, my voice fierce. And I'm going to make sure she gets it. I believe you will. She handed me a card. This is my personal number. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Day or night. After she left, I got Kayamika ready for bed. As I tucked her in, she looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. Mummy, are we going home soon? Home. Such a simple question with such a complicated answer. We had no home. Just Ngozi's couch and whatever temporary places we could afford. Soon, baby. But first, Mummy has some business to take care of. What kind of business? The kind that's going to make sure we're safe. That nobody can hurt us anymore. She seemed to accept this, snuggling into the pillow. I like Abuja. It's nice here. It is nice, I agreed, though I was barely seeing the city. My mind was already in Lagos, imagining Chaik's face when the EFCC agents knocked on his door. I lay in my own bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow would be the beginning of justice. My phone buzzed around 11 p.m. A text from an unknown number. This is Agent Okonkwo from the EFCC. Barrister Folake gave me your contact. Can you call me? It's important. My heart racing, I stepped into the hallway so I wouldn't wake Kayamika and dialed the number. Mrs. Adeyemi? A man's voice, professional and direct. Yes. Is everything all right? I'm afraid we have a complication. We were planning to execute the raid tomorrow morning, but we just received intelligence that your ex-husband is planning to move a significant amount of evidence tonight. We need to move up our timeline. To when? Now. We're mobilizing teams as we speak. They'll reach his residence in about an hour. I'm calling because we need you to verify some information for us. Can you describe the layout of the house? Specifically, where he kept his safe and his home office. I closed my eyes, picturing the house that used to be mine. The study is on the second floor, third door on the right from the main staircase. The safe is behind a painting of the Lagos Lagoon. It's a large canvas of boats at sunset. The painting swings out on hinges. And his home office? He has a desk in the study, but his real office is in the basement. He converted it 3 years ago, said he needed more privacy for business calls. It's climate-controlled, soundproofed. He spent almost 10 million naira on that renovation. I heard Agent Okonkwo relay this information to someone in the background. Mrs. Adeyemi, this basement office. Did you ever go inside? Only once or twice. He didn't like me being down there. Said it was his private space. Do you remember anything about it? Computers, filing cabinets, anything? I searched my memory. There were multiple computers. At least 3 that I saw. And a large server. I remember asking him why he needed so much equipment, and he said it was for inventory management. But there was also a wall of filing cabinets. Metal ones, with locks. Good. This is very helpful. Now, I need to ask you something difficult. When these raids happen, there will be media attention. A lot of it. Your ex-husband will likely try to spin this, claim he's being persecuted, that his accusers are bitter ex-wives. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes to protect my daughter. Even if it means your face being on the news, your story becoming public. I thought about the humiliation on the plane, about being kicked out of my own house, about 3 years of poverty and struggle while Chaik lived in luxury with his mistresses, about him letting Kayamika's condition worsen for his own gain. Let them see my face, I said. Let everyone know what he did to us. I'm done hiding in shame for someone else's sins. That's what I needed to hear. Get some rest, Mrs. Adeyemi. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. But rest was impossible. I sat by the window, watching the street below, wondering what was happening in Lagos. Were the agents surrounding Chaik's house right now? Was he awake, sensing something was wrong? Or was he sleeping peacefully, confident in his power and untouchability? Around 1 a.m., my phone rang again. Barrister Folake. You heard? She asked without preamble. The EFCC agent called. They moved up the timeline. I'm watching the news. It's starting to break. Adunni, you need to see this. I don't have a TV in my room. Check online. NTA News, live stream. I pulled up the website on my phone, and there it was, shaky mobile phone footage of EFCC vehicles surrounding a house I knew all too well. My former home. Agents in tactical gear were entering through the front door while news crews filmed from the street. The news anchor's voice was excited. Breaking news tonight as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission raids the home of prominent Lagos businessman Chaik Okafor. Sources tell us this is part of a larger investigation into money laundering and fraud involving multiple high-profile individuals. We're seeing agents removing boxes of documents and computer equipment. I watched, transfixed, as they brought out box after box. And then, in handcuffs, Chaik himself. Even in the grainy footage, I could see his face, no longer arrogant and dismissive, but shocked and afraid. He looked directly at one of the cameras, and for a moment, it felt like he was looking at me. As if he knew somehow that I was watching, that I was part of this. Good. I wanted him to know. There's more, Barrister Folake said. They're also raiding Mrs. Blessing Nwosu's residence. Turns out she wasn't just a mistress. She was helping him hide assets. The apartment he bought for her? Filled with cash and documents. Is she being arrested too? As we speak. along with 2 other mistresses and 3 business associates. This is bigger than we thought, Adunni. Much bigger. I watched the news coverage continue, more raids, more arrests. The anchor mentioned charges: money laundering, fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy. They didn't mention the medical neglect yet, but that would come. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait for morning. The EFCC will want to interview you, get your formal statement. The media will want to talk to you too. But you don't have to speak to them if you're not ready. I'm ready. I want to tell my story. I want everyone to know what he did to us. Then we'll make sure they hear it. Every word. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness, still watching the news coverage. More details were emerging. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. Connections to a criminal network that spanned 3 countries. The amounts of money involved were staggering. Hundreds of millions of naira. All this time, while I was washing clothes and selling groundnuts to afford my daughter's medication, Chaik had been sitting on a fortune. Money he'd stolen. Money he'd laundered. Money he'd hidden while claiming in court that he couldn't afford proper child support. The rage that filled me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was clean and pure and righteous. I thought about Mrs. Blessing Nwosu on that plane, dripping in gold jewelry, sneering at me like I was garbage. She'd been living off stolen money, enjoying luxuries bought with criminal proceeds, and she'd had the audacity to judge me for being poor. Tomorrow, the whole country would know the truth. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Ngozi. I'm watching the news. Oh my God, Adunni. Are you okay? I typed back. I'm better than okay. I'm finally getting justice. She responded immediately. I'm so proud of you. Kayamika is lucky to have you as her mother. Those words meant everything. For 3 years, I'd felt like a failure. Like I'd let my daughter down by not being able to provide the life she deserved. But I'd protected her. I'd kept her safe. I'd fought for her even when I had nothing left to fight with. That made me a good mother. The best mother I could be. I finally fell asleep around 4 a.m., exhausted but somehow at peace. When I woke 3 hours later, sunlight was streaming through the window and Kayamika was already awake, watching cartoons on my phone. Mummy, there are people with cameras outside, she said, pointing to the window. I looked out and my heart sank. The guest house was surrounded by news vans. Somehow, they'd found us. My phone was ringing. Barrister Folake again. Don't go outside yet, she said. I'm sending a car for you. We'll hold a proper press conference. Do this right. Give me 30 minutes. How did they find us? Does it matter? This is what we wanted. Attention, visibility. Now Chaik can't make you disappear. Now everyone will know your story. She was right. This was what I wanted. I got Kayamika dressed in her best outfit, a simple but clean dress that Ngozi had bought her for her last birthday. I put on my own least worn dress and tried to do something with my hair. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who'd been beaten down by life but refused to stay down. I saw a fighter. The car Barrister Folake sent was a nice one. A black SUV with tinted windows. The driver helped us navigate through the crowd of reporters, all shouting questions. Mrs. Adeyemi, is it true your ex-husband tried to kill your daughter? Did you know about his criminal activities? How do you feel about his arrest? I said nothing, just held Kayamika close and got in the car. But I met their cameras with my head held high. Let them see me. Let them see my daughter. Let them see what Chaik had tried to destroy. We drove to Barrister Folake's office, where she was waiting with Agent Okonkwo and 2 other EFCC officials. They wanted my statement, every detail I could remember about Chaik's activities during our marriage. I told them everything. The strange visitors. The cash transactions. The offshore accounts he'd mentioned once when he was drunk. The properties he'd bought in other people's names. The times he'd bragged about knowing people who could make problems disappear. And I told them about Kayamika. About the medical neglect. About the insurance policy. About how he'd been willing to let our daughter die for money. Agent Okonkwo's jaw tightened as he listened. We'll add child endangerment to the charges. With Dr. Emeka's report, we have everything we need. How long will he be in prison? I asked. If we can prove even half of what we've uncovered, 20 years. Maybe more. 20 years. Kayamaka would be a grown woman by the time her father got out. Good, I said simply. After the interview, Barrister Folake took me aside. Are you ready for this? The press conference. Once we do this, there's no going back. Your life will never be private again. I looked at Kayamaka, sitting in the corner with her coloring book, oblivious to the storm swirling around her. I'm ready, I said. Let's tell them everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Do you think Adunni should do the press conference? What would you say if you were in her position? Comment below. The press conference was held in a large conference room on the ground floor of Barrister Folake's office building. When we walked in, I was stunned by how many reporters had gathered. At least 50, maybe more, with cameras, microphones, and recording equipment filling every available space. Barrister Folake had arranged for Kayamaka to stay in a comfortable waiting room with her secretary, who'd brought toys and snacks to keep her occupied. I was grateful for that. My daughter didn't need to see this, didn't need to hear the painful details of what her father had done. I sat at a long table facing the cameras, Barrister Folake on one side and Agent Okonkwo on the other. The lights were bright and hot, and my hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the microphone in front of me. Barrister Folake spoke first, her voice clear and professional. Thank you all for coming. My name is Barrister Folake Williams, and I'm representing Mrs. Adunni Adeyemi in matters related to her ex-husband, Chike Okafor, who was arrested early this morning by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The room erupted with questions, reporters shouting over each other. Barrister Folake held up her hand. Please. We'll take questions after Mrs. Adeyemi reads her statement. This is her story to tell. She nodded at me, and I looked down at the paper I'd prepared with her help. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger as I spoke. My name is Adunni Adeyemi. 3 years ago, I was married to Chike Okafor. We had what I thought was a good life, a beautiful home, financial security, a daughter we both loved. But I didn't know that my husband was living a double life. I paused, taking a breath. The room was silent now, everyone listening. When I discovered he was having multiple affairs and confronted him, he threw me out of our home. He changed the locks while I was at my daughter's medical appointment. He spread lies about me, told everyone I was mentally unstable, that I was a bad mother, that I'd been unfaithful. None of it was true, but in divorce proceedings, it didn't matter. He had money and lawyers and connections. I had nothing. My voice cracked, but I pushed on. My daughter, Kayamaka, has a serious heart condition. When my ex-husband had temporary custody during the divorce, he stopped giving her the medication she needed. Her condition deteriorated so badly that doctors were shocked when they saw her. He did this deliberately, to make it look like I couldn't properly care for her. He was building a case to take her away from me permanently. I heard gasps from the audience. Several reporters were scribbling furiously in their notebooks. But it was even worse than that. Recently, I discovered that my ex-husband had taken out a 50 million naira life insurance policy on Kayamaka, a policy that would pay out if she died from her heart condition. He was willing to let our daughter die for money. The room exploded with noise, shocked exclamations, more questions shouted over each other. Barrister Folake had to call for order several times. Just 3 days ago, I continued, my voice steady now despite the tears on my cheeks. I tried to fly from Lagos to Abuja to bring Kayamaka to a specialist appointment. We were kicked off the plane because of how we looked, because poverty shows, and people judge you for it. The woman who had us removed was Mrs. Blessing Nwosu, one of my ex-husband's mistresses. She recognized me. She humiliated us deliberately, trying to prevent us from reaching Abuja. I looked directly into the cameras. For 3 years, I've lived in poverty while my ex-husband lived in luxury with stolen money. I worked 3 jobs to afford my daughter's medication while he bought apartments for his mistresses with laundered cash. I was made to feel worthless, like I'd failed as a wife and mother, when all along he was the criminal. He was the monster. I wiped my eyes, but I didn't hide my tears. Let them see my pain. Let them see what women like me go through every day. I'm speaking out because I know I'm not the only one. How many other women have been destroyed by men who use their money and power as weapons? How many other children have suffered because their fathers cared more about greed than love? How many of us have been silenced by shame, by fear, by a system that protects the wealthy and powerful while grinding the rest of us into dust? I stood up, my hands pressed flat on the table. I'm done being silent. I'm done being ashamed of being a victim. And I'm done letting men like Chike Okafor get away with destroying lives. If you're watching this and you've been through something similar, if you've been thrown away, humiliated, abused, I want you to know that you're not alone. And you don't have to stay silent either. The room erupted in applause. Some of the female reporters were crying. Even Agent Okonkwo looked moved. Barrister Folake let the applause die down before speaking again. Mrs. Adeyemi has shown incredible courage in coming forward. The EFCC's investigation has revealed that Chike Okafor was involved in a criminal network that spans multiple countries. The charges against him include money laundering, fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, and child endangerment. We expect additional charges to be filed as the investigation continues. We'll take a few questions now, she added. Hands shot up across the room. Barrister Folake pointed to a woman in the front row. Mrs. Adeyemi, how is your daughter doing now? She's stable, I said. Thanks to proper medical care and medication, which I've been providing despite having almost no money. She'll need surgery eventually, but her doctors are optimistic about her long-term prognosis. She's a fighter, like her mother. Another reporter, what do you want to happen to your ex-husband? I want justice. Not just for me and Kayamaka, but for everyone he's hurt. Every person he's stolen from, every life he's destroyed with his greed. I want him to face the full consequences of his actions. Are you afraid of retaliation? That question gave me pause. Was I afraid? Yes. Men like Chike had connections, resources, ways of reaching people even from behind bars. But fear had kept me silent for 3 years. Fear had made me accept poverty and humiliation without fighting back. I was done being afraid. If something happens to me, I said carefully, if I suddenly disappear or have an accident, everyone will know who's responsible. That's why I'm speaking publicly. That's why I'm making sure my story is documented and witnessed. He can't make me disappear now. More questions followed, about the divorce, about the other mistresses, about how I'd survived the past 3 years. I answered them all honestly, holding nothing back. Every painful detail, every humiliation, every moment of desperation. I wanted the world to see the real cost of men like Chike Okafor. Finally, Barrister Folake called an end to the questions. Thank you all for coming. Mrs. Adeyemi needs to be with her daughter now. Any further inquiries can be directed to my office. As we left the conference room, reporters surrounded us, still shouting questions. But this time, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt powerful. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I had some control over my own story. In the waiting room, Kayamaka ran to me immediately. Mummy, did you see all those cameras? It was like you were a movie star. I laughed, gathering her into my arms. Something like that, baby. When can we go home to Auntie Ngozi? Home. That word again. But maybe home didn't have to be a place. Maybe home was wherever we were together, safe and loved. Soon, I promised. But first, we have a few more things to take care of here in Abuja. Barrister Folake's phone was ringing constantly. She answered one call, listened for a moment, then smiled broadly. That was the EFCC, she told me. They've frozen all of Chaik's accounts. Every single one, including the offshore ones. They've seized his properties, his cars, his stores. Everything. He has nothing left. The satisfaction I felt was almost overwhelming. For 3 years, he'd lived in comfort while we struggled. Now the tables had turned completely. What will happen to all that money? The seized assets. After the legal fees and restitution to his victims, anything left will likely go to the government. Unless... She paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. Unless someone makes a claim as a creditor. Someone he owes money to for, say, unpaid child support over 3 years. I stared at her. Are you saying? I'm saying we need to file a civil suit immediately. Document every naira you should have received for Kayamika's care. Calculate the value of the marital assets you were entitled to in the divorce but never received. Make a formal claim before anyone else does. How much are we talking about? She pulled out a calculator and started writing figures. Conservative estimate. At least 30 million naira. Maybe more. 30 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to pay for Kayamika's surgery. Enough to buy us a real home. Enough to secure our future. Do it, I said without hesitation. File whatever papers you need to file. Consider it done. She was already typing on her laptop. This will take a few days to process, but I'll make sure we're first in line. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ngozi. This time with a link to a news article. The headline read, Brave Mother Exposes Ex-Husband's Criminal Empire. Moved 2 tiers as she describes years of abuse. Below it was a photo of me from the press conference. Tears streaming down my face but my jaw set with determination. The article had already been shared thousands of times on social media. You're trending on Twitter, Barrister Folake said, showing me her phone. #Justice for Adunni is the top hashtag in Nigeria right now. I scrolled through the posts. Hundreds of women sharing their own stories of abuse, of poverty after divorce, of men who used children as weapons. Stories of survival and strength. We started something, I whispered. No, Barrister Folake corrected. You started something. You gave all those women a voice by using yours first. That evening, back at the guest house, I lay in bed with Kayamika curled against me. She'd fallen asleep watching cartoons, exhausted from the long day. I stroked her hair and thought about everything that had happened in just 48 hours. 2 days ago, I'd been kicked off a plane, humiliated and hopeless. Now, I was the face of a movement. My ex-husband was in jail. Justice was finally within reach. My phone rang, an unknown Lagos number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Adunni. Chaik's voice, rough and desperate. We need to talk. My blood ran cold. How are you calling me? I thought you were in custody. I get one phone call. I chose to use it on you. He paused. Please. Just listen. I can explain everything. Explain. I cut him off, my voice hard. Explain which part? The mistresses? The stolen money? The life insurance policy on our daughter? The medical neglect that nearly killed her? It wasn't like that. You don't understand the pressure I was under. The people I was dealing with. They would have killed me if I didn't cooperate. I was trying to protect us. By throwing me out on the street? By letting Kayamika suffer? That's your definition of protection. I made mistakes. I know that. But I'm still her father. I still love her. And you, Adunni, I still love you. We can fix this. If you just drop the charges, tell them you were mistaken about the medical neglect. I laughed, a bitter sound. You think I'm that stupid? You think I'm still the naive woman you married, the one who believed your lies? I'm facing 20 years in prison. 20 years. Our daughter will be grown by the time I get out. Please. Adunni. Please. I'm begging you. You should have thought about that before you destroyed our lives. My voice was ice. You're right about one thing though. Kayamika will be grown by the time you get out. And she'll be successful, and loved, and happy. Everything you tried to prevent her from being. She'll thrive without you. Don't do this. We're done, Chaik. Forever. And if you ever try to contact me or my daughter again, I'll make sure additional charges are filed. Stay away from us. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking. Kayamika stirred beside me. Mummy. Who was that? Nobody. Baby. Nobody important. She settled back against me, already half asleep again. Love you, Mummy. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in the world. As I lay there in the darkness, I realized something profound. For 3 years, I'd defined myself by what I'd lost. My marriage, my home, my comfortable life. I'd mourned the person I used to be, the life I thought I'd have. But that life had been built on lies and criminal money. That person, the naive, trusting wife, she'd needed to die so the real me could emerge. And the real me? She was stronger than I'd ever imagined possible. Tomorrow, I'd return to Lagos. I'd face whatever came next. But I'd do it with my head held high, knowing that I'd fought back and won. Justice wasn't just about Chaik going to prison. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my voice, my life. And that victory was already mine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. How do you feel about Chaik calling from jail? Should Adunni have spoken to him? Let us know in the comments below. The story exploded across Nigeria like wildfire. By evening, every news channel was running coverage of the press conference. Social media erupted with hashtags. Hashtag Justice for Adunni. Hashtag Protect Our Children. Hashtag Chaik Okafor must fall. My face was everywhere. Newspapers, websites, television screens. I'd become the symbol of something bigger than myself. Women started sharing their own stories online, posting about husbands who'd abandoned them, men who'd used children as weapons in divorce battles, systems that had failed them. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages of support. But not everyone was on my side. That night, back at the guest house with extra security guards stationed outside, I made the mistake of reading the comments on one of the news articles. Most were supportive, but some cut deep. She's just a bitter ex-wife trying to destroy a successful man. Why didn't she speak up sooner? Seems convenient that she's coming forward now. Gold digger upset she lost access to his money. Typical woman playing the victim card. Each comment was a knife twist, especially because they echoed things Chaik had said to me during our marriage. That I was dramatic. That I was ungrateful. That I was nothing without him. Stop reading those, Barrister Folake said when she video called to check on me. Trolls are always going to troll. Focus on the thousands of people supporting you, not the handful trying to tear you down. It's hard to ignore. I know. But here's what matters. The EFCC has enough evidence to prosecute Chaik successfully. His lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea deal, which tells you everything you need to know about how strong our case is. A plea deal? He shouldn't get any deals. Relax. Agent Okonkwo won't accept anything less than significant prison time. But the fact that they're asking means Chaik knows he's finished. And there's more good news. Dr. Emeka's report was filed with the courts this afternoon. Combined with your testimony and the insurance policy documentation, the child endangerment case is airtight. I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. What about Mrs. Blessing Nwosu? She's trying to claim she didn't know about Chaik's criminal activities. Says she was just an innocent girlfriend who had no idea what her boyfriend was doing. Barrister Folake's laugh was bitter. But we have text messages between them discussing how to hide assets. She's going down too. After we hung up, I checked on Kayamika. She was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady. The stress of the day hadn't affected her. Children were resilient in ways adults could never be. I was about to settle into my own bed when someone knocked on the door. My heart jumped, but one of the security guards called out, "Mrs. Adeyemi, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." Who? Captain Ifeanyi Nwankwo. The pilot. The man who'd given us money for new tickets at the airport. What was he doing here? I opened the door to find Captain Ifeanyi standing in the hallway, still in his pilot's uniform. He looked tired but determined. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late," he said. "But I saw your press conference. I had to come." "Come in," I said, gesturing to the small seating area near the window, keeping my voice low so as not to wake Kayamika. He sat down, clasping his hands together. "First, I want to apologize. I work for the airline that allowed you and your daughter to be treated so shamefully. What happened on that flight should never have happened. You already helped us. You gave us money when we had nothing. That wasn't enough. It will never be enough to make up for the disgrace you suffered. But there's something else, something I learned today that you need to know." My stomach tightened. "What?" "I did some investigating after your press conference. Called in some favors, talked to colleagues. Mrs. Blessing Nwosu made several calls right before that flight. One was to your ex-husband. The others were to airport security and to our head of operations." "I don't understand." "She didn't just recognize you by chance, Mrs. Adeyemi. She knew you'd be on that flight. Someone told her. And those calls she made. She was pulling strings to ensure you'd be removed from the plane. The security officers who dragged you off? They'd been given instructions to respond quickly and aggressively to any complaint about you specifically." The room spun. "It was planned. The whole thing." "Yes. And there's more. I checked the passenger manifest. Guess who was sitting 3 rows behind you in economy?" "Who?" "Samuel Okafor. Your ex-husband's younger brother." I felt sick. Samuel had been there, watching while his brother's mistress humiliated me, probably recording it on his phone, laughing about it. "He was there to make sure the plan worked," Captain Ifeanyi continued. "To make sure you didn't make it to Abuja, that you missed your daughter's appointment. They wanted to keep you from getting that medical documentation." "But why? What difference would one doctor's appointment make?" "Because Dr. Emeka isn't just any doctor. He's one of the leading experts on pediatric cardiology in West Africa. His word carries weight in court. If he documented the neglect, it would destroy any custody claim your ex-husband might make. They couldn't risk it." I thought about Samuel Okafor, quiet, unassuming Samuel who'd always seemed sympathetic during the divorce, who told me once that he thought Chike was being too harsh. It had all been an act. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you need to know how deep this conspiracy goes. It's not just your ex-husband and Mrs. Nwosu. It's his family, his business partners, maybe even corrupt officials he's paid off. These people have resources, Mrs. Adeyemi. They have connections. And now that you've exposed them publicly, they're going to fight back. The EFCC said I'm under protection." "Legal protection, yes. But social protection? Character protection? They're going to try to destroy your reputation. Spread rumors. Find anyone willing to say negative things about you. They'll dig up your past, twist every mistake you've ever made, try to make you look like the villain." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "I'm telling you this because I want you to be prepared. And because I want to help. I have connections too. Media contacts, lawyers, people who can counter the narrative they're going to try to create. Let me help you fight this properly." I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. "Why do you care so much? You don't even know me." "Because I have a sister," he said quietly. "She was in a situation similar to yours 5 years ago. Married to a man who abused her, who threw her out with nothing, who turned everyone against her. She tried to fight back, but she didn't have anyone to help her. No lawyer, no media attention, no protection. She lost custody of her children. She lost everything. His voice cracked. She killed herself 3 years ago. Jumped off the third mainland bridge. Left a note saying she couldn't live in a world that punished her for her husband's sins. Tears filled my eyes. I'm so sorry. When I saw you on that plane, when I heard them calling you a thief and a beggar, I saw my sister. I couldn't help her, but maybe I can help you. Maybe I can make sure another woman doesn't have to die because the system failed her. I reached across and took his hand. Thank you. For everything. But I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to let them break me. I've come too far for that. I believe you. You're stronger than my sister was. But even strong people need allies. So let me be one of yours. We talked for another hour. He gave me names of journalists who could be trusted, lawyers who specialized in character defamation cases, support groups for divorced women. He promised to testify about what had happened on the flight, to provide evidence of the conspiracy. By the time he left, I felt more prepared for what was coming. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. But at least now I knew I wasn't fighting alone. The next morning, I woke to find my phone flooded with missed calls. Most were from reporters, but one was from a number I recognized. My mother in Ibadan. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the divorce. They'd been ashamed of me for failing at marriage, had told me I should go back to Chike and beg for forgiveness, that I was bringing disgrace to the family name. The last time we spoke, my father had told me not to contact them until I'd fixed my situation. With trembling hands, I called back. Adunni. My mother's voice was thick with emotion. Yes, Mama. I saw you on television. We both did, your father and I. The press conference. I braced myself for criticism. For more shame. I'm so sorry, my daughter. So sorry. I nearly dropped the phone. What? We were wrong. So wrong about everything. We believed that man's lies. We turned our backs on you when you needed us most. Can you ever forgive us? Tears streamed down my face. Mama. Your father wants to talk to you. He's been crying all night. Says he failed you as a father. My father took the phone. Adunni. My daughter. His voice broke. I should have protected you. Should have fought for you. Instead, I told you to accept your situation like a good wife. I am ashamed of myself. Papa, it's okay. It's not okay. But if you'll let us, we want to help you now. We want to be part of Kayamika's life. We want to support you properly this time. I couldn't speak through my tears. For 3 years, I'd felt abandoned by everyone. And now, because I'd found the courage to speak my truth publicly, people were returning to my side. Come home to Ibadan when this is over, my mother said, taking the phone back. Bring Kayamika. We'll take care of you both while you figure out your next steps. Thank you, Mama. Thank you so much. After we hung up, I sat on the bed, overwhelmed by emotion. Kayamika woke up and crawled into my lap. Why are you crying, Mummy? Happy tears. Baby. These are happy tears. My phone rang again. Barrister Folake. Good morning. Are you watching the news? Not yet. Why? Turn on NTA. Now. I fumbled for the remote and switched on the television. The morning news was showing footage from outside the police station where Chike was being held. A crowd had gathered, mostly women, holding signs that read, "Justice for Adunni," and "Protect our children," and men like Chike must face consequences. The reporter was interviewing protesters. We're here because this could be any of us. Any woman in Nigeria could end up like Adunni, thrown away by a man who thinks he's above the law. We're demanding justice not just for her, but for all of us. I watched, stunned, as the protest grew. More women arrived, then some men too. Children holding their mothers' hands. Grandmothers with canes. People from all walks of life, united in support of my story. This is unprecedented, the news anchor was saying. What started as one woman's fight for justice has become a national movement calling for reforms in how divorce cases are handled, how child custody is determined, and how financial crimes are prosecuted. You did this, Barrister Folake said on the phone. You gave voice to thousands of women who've been suffering in silence. You showed them that fighting back is possible. I just told the truth. The truth is powerful, Adunni. Never forget that. Now, are you ready for the next step? What next step? Court appearance. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You'll need to be there to testify. Chaik will be there too. In chains, but still there. Can you face him? Could I? Could I stand in the same room as the man who tried to destroy me and look him in the eye? Yes, I said firmly. I can face him. I can face anything now. Good. Because tomorrow is when we show him, and everyone watching, that justice still exists in Nigeria. That even powerful men can fall when their victims refuse to stay silent. After we hung up, I held Kayamika close and watched the protest on television grow larger. My daughter would grow up knowing that her mother had fought back. That her mother had refused to accept injustice. That her mother had been brave. And maybe, just maybe, she'd grow up in a world where women didn't have to be that brave. Where the system protected them instead of failing them. But that world would only exist if people like me kept fighting for it. Tomorrow, in that courtroom, I would face my abuser. And I would not blink. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Are you ready to see Adunni face Chaik in court? What do you think will happen? Comment below. The morning of the court hearing, I woke before dawn. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chaik's face. Not the handsome, charming man I'd married, but the cold stranger who'd thrown me out like garbage. The man who'd been willing to let our daughter die for money. I dressed carefully in a simple but dignified outfit that Barrister Folake had sent over. A modest dress in deep blue, professional and respectful. Nothing flashy, nothing that could be used against me. I wanted the judge to see a mother, a survivor, a woman worthy of justice. Kayamika was still sleeping, watched over by the woman from Child Services. I kissed her forehead gently, careful not to wake her. She didn't need to be in that courtroom. She didn't need to see her father in chains or hear the ugly details of what he'd done. The courthouse in Abuja was already surrounded by media and protesters when we arrived. The crowd had grown even larger overnight, hundreds of people holding signs, chanting for justice. Security guards formed a protective barrier as Barrister Folake and I made our way through. Stay strong, she whispered as we entered the building. Remember, you're not alone in there. I'll be right beside you. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled with journalists, activists, curious onlookers, and Chaik's family members who glared at me with pure hatred. I kept my head high and walked to my seat, refusing to show fear. And then they brought him in. Chaik Okafor, once so powerful and arrogant, shuffled into the courtroom in handcuffs and a prison-issue orange jumpsuit. His face was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot, his expensive confidence replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, time stopped. I expected to feel anger, hatred, the burning desire for revenge that had sustained me through these past days. Instead, I felt pity. This broken man in chains had once been someone I loved, someone I'd built a life with. Someone I'd trusted with my heart and my future. And he'd thrown it all away for money and ego and the hollow validation of women who didn't really care about him. He looked away first, unable to hold my gaze. All rise for the Honorable Justice Amina Bello, the bailiff announced. The judge was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the documents before her. When she finally looked up, her eyes swept the courtroom with authority. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of the Federal Republic of Nigeria versus Chike Okafor and co-defendants, she began. Mr. Okafor, you stand accused of multiple counts of money laundering, fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, child endangerment, and medical neglect. How do you plead? Chike's lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a three-piece suit, stood. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty to all charges. We believe this is a case of mistaken. Save it for trial, Justice Bello cut him off. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the EFCC, and I find sufficient grounds to proceed. However, before we discuss bail conditions, I want to hear testimony from the complainant regarding the child endangerment charges. Mrs. Adeyemi, please approach the witness stand. My legs felt weak as I stood, but I made them carry me forward. I was sworn in, my hand on the Bible, promising to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mrs. Adeyemi, Justice Bello said, her voice gentler now, please tell the court in your own words what happened to your daughter while she was in your ex-husband's custody. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told them everything. About Kayamika's heart condition and how well she'd been doing under my care before the divorce. About how Chike had fought for custody, claiming I was unfit, and how the court had given him temporary custody for 3 months. About how when I finally got her back, she was pale and weak, her condition dramatically worse. I blamed myself, I said, my voice breaking. I thought the stress of the divorce had made her sicker. I thought I'd failed her as a mother. But then Dr. Emeka Okonkwo at the National Hospital examined her records and discovered that the deterioration matched someone who'd stopped taking their medication. I looked directly at Chike. He let our daughter suffer. He withheld life-saving medication from a 6-year-old child, his own flesh and blood, so he could build a case that I was a bad mother. So he could claim her condition was my fault. And the insurance policy? Justice Bello prompted. 3 weeks ago, he took out a 50 million naira life insurance policy on Kayamika. It pays out if she dies from her heart condition within 2 years. He's the sole beneficiary. The courtroom erupted in angry murmurs. Justice Bello banged her gavel for silence. Mr. Okafor's lawyer, do you have anything to say to this testimony? The lawyer stood, looking uncomfortable. Your Honor, we dispute these allegations. The insurance policy was simply a prudent financial decision. A prudent decision? I couldn't help myself. To bet 50 million naira on your own daughter's death? What kind of father does that? Mrs. Adeyemi, please. Justice Bello began. No. The word burst from me, 3 years of suppressed rage finally finding its voice. I've been silent for too long. I've let this man destroy my reputation, steal my home, turn everyone against me. I've accepted poverty and humiliation and shame because I thought that's what good women do, suffer quietly and hope for justice someday. I stood up in the witness box, my voice rising. But staying silent almost cost my daughter her life. If I hadn't found the courage to fight back, if Captain Afani hadn't helped us get to Abuja, if Dr. Emeka hadn't discovered the truth, Kayamika might have died. And this man, I pointed at Chike, would have collected 50 million naira and gone on with his life like she never existed. The courtroom was completely silent now. He didn't just steal money from his business partners. He didn't just cheat on his taxes. He tried to murder our daughter through neglect and make it look like natural causes. That's not just fraud, Your Honor. That's evil. Justice Bello studied me for a long moment, then turned to Chike. Mr. Okafor, would you like to respond to these allegations? Chike stood slowly, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, he looked at me directly. Adunni. It's Mrs. Adeyemi to you, I cut him off coldly. He flinched. Mrs. Adeyemi. I never meant for things to go this far. The business problems, the money issues, I got in over my head. People I owed money to were threatening me. I made bad decisions. You made evil decisions, I corrected. Bad decisions are forgetting to pay a bill or staying out too late. Evil decisions are using your child as an insurance policy. I would never have let anything happen to Kayamika. You already let something happen to her. My voice cracked. You withheld her medication. You made her sicker. For what? Money. Pride. Because you couldn't stand that I might actually be a better parent than you. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. You know what the worst part is? I loved you once. I believed in you. I built my life around you. And when you threw me away, I thought it was somehow my fault. That I hadn't been good enough, hadn't tried hard enough, hadn't pleased you enough. I carried that shame for 3 years. I wiped my tears angrily. But it was never about me. It was always about you, your ego, your greed, your complete lack of human decency. You're not just a criminal, Chaik. You're a coward. A man who hurts women and children because they're easier targets than the people who actually threaten you. Chaik's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Justice Bello silenced him with a look. I'm not asking this court for revenge, I continued, my voice steadier now. I'm asking for justice. Real justice. The kind that says a man can't destroy his family and walk away unpunished. The kind that says children deserve protection, even from their own parents. The kind that says women like me, poor, struggling, cast aside, matter just as much as rich, powerful men. I turned to face the gallery, where hundreds of eyes watched me. I'm asking for justice not just for me and Kayamika, but for every woman who's been in my position. Every mother who's had to fight for her children. Every wife who's been thrown away like she means nothing. We deserve better. We deserve to be believed. We deserve to be protected. I sat back down, emotionally exhausted, my whole body shaking. Justice Bello was quiet for a long moment, then she spoke. In 23 years on the bench, I've heard many cases, but rarely have I encountered something so calculated, so cruel, as what's been described here today. Mr. Okafor, I am denying your request for bail. You will remain in custody until trial. Chaik's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, that's highly irregular. What's irregular is a father taking out an insurance policy on his sick child's death. What's irregular is a businessman using his daughter as a pawn in a custody battle. What's irregular is the level of depravity demonstrated in this case. Justice Bello's voice was steel. Bail denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering an expedited trial date. This case will be heard in full within 60 days. She turned to me. Mrs. Adeyemi, I want you to know that this court sees you. Your testimony has been compelling and credible. Whatever the outcome of this trial, you've already accomplished something remarkable. You've given voice to thousands of silent women. Don't let anyone diminish that. As the bailiffs led Chaik out of the courtroom, he looked back at me one last time. His mouth moved, and I could just make out the words. I'm sorry. Too little. Too late. The trial itself, 6 weeks later, was a media sensation. Every major news outlet covered it. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, text messages, medical documentation, testimony from Dr. Emeka, Captain Afani, and dozens of others. Mrs. Blessing Nwosu tried to claim she was just an innocent girlfriend, but the prosecution had recordings of her conversations with Chaik, discussing how to hide assets and prevent me from reaching Abuja. She was convicted as an accessory to fraud and conspiracy. Samuel Okafor, Chaik's brother, was also charged for his role in the airport incident. Captain Afani's testimony about the planned nature of the attack was devastating. On the final day of trial, after weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Justice Bello sentenced Chaik to 25 years in prison for the financial crimes, to be served consecutively with an additional 10 years for child endangerment. 35 years total. Mr. Okafor, she said as she handed down the sentence, you took a sacred trust, the responsibility of caring for your own child, and you perverted it for financial gain. You endangered an innocent life. There is no punishment severe enough for such betrayal, But this court will do what it can to ensure you never have the opportunity to hurt another child or another woman again. Mrs. Blessing Nwosu received 15 years. Samuel Okafor got 5 years for conspiracy. Several of Chike's business associates received varying sentences. The day the verdicts were read, the crowd outside the courthouse erupted in cheers. Women were crying, hugging each other, holding up signs that read, "Justice won," and "Thank you, Adunni." 3 months after the trial, Kayamaka and I moved back to Ibadan to live with my parents. They'd turned their guest house into a small apartment for us, modest but comfortable. My father had tears in his eyes when he carried Kayamaka's bags inside. "This is your home," he said, "for as long as you need it." I enrolled in a business management course at the university, determined to build a career that would provide stability for my daughter. Barrister Folake had helped me access some of Chike's frozen assets, money that was legally mine from our marriage, that he'd hidden. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to pay for Kayamaka's eventual surgery and give us a fresh start. Captain Ifoni and I became close friends. He introduced me to other women who'd survived similar situations, and together we started a support group that met every week. We called it Rising Phoenix, women rebuilding their lives from the ashes. The group grew quickly. Within 6 months, we had chapters in 5 cities. Women came to share their stories, to find resources, to know they weren't alone. Some went on to start businesses. Others returned to school. All of them found their voices again. Dr. Emeka performed Kayamaka's surgery when she turned 7, a complete success. She recovered beautifully, her energy returning, her smile brighter than ever. She started school, made friends, lived the normal childhood she deserved. One afternoon, about a year after the trial, Kayamaka and I were sitting in our small garden when she asked, "Mummy, what happened to Daddy?" I'd been dreading this question but knew it would come eventually. "Your daddy made some very bad choices," I said carefully. "He hurt people, including you and me. So he's in prison now, where he can't hurt anyone anymore." "Is he ever coming out?" "Not for a very long time. You'll be a grown woman before he's released." She thought about this for a moment, then said, "Good. I like it better with just you and me and Grandma and Grandpa." "Me too, baby. Me too." 2 years after the trial, I stood on a stage in Lagos, speaking at a national conference on women's rights and family law reform. The conference center was packed with activists, lawyers, government officials, and ordinary women who traveled from across Nigeria to be there. "My name is Adunni Adeyemi," I began, my voice strong and clear. "Some of you may remember my story, the homeless single mother who was kicked off a plane, whose ex-husband tried to let her daughter die for insurance money. That story made headlines. It sparked protests. It led to criminal convictions." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But that's not really my story. My real story is about every woman in this room. Every woman in Nigeria. Every woman anywhere who's been told she doesn't matter because she's poor, or because she's divorced, or because she dared to stand up to a powerful man. My real story is about choosing to fight back. About refusing to accept injustice just because it's common. About believing that one voice, my voice, your voice, can make a difference. I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come. 3 years ago, I was sleeping on my sister's couch, working 3 jobs, convinced that I'd lost everything. Today, I'm standing here, my daughter is healthy and happy, and I'm part of a movement that's changing laws and changing lives. But we're not done. Not even close. Because for every woman whose story makes headlines, there are thousands suffering in silence. For every man who faces consequences, there are hundreds who don't. The system is still broken. Society still favors wealth over justice, power over truth. My voice rose with passion. So we keep fighting. We keep speaking up. We keep supporting each other. We keep demanding better laws, better protections, better treatment. Not just for ourselves, but for our daughters. For the next generation of women who deserve to grow up in a world where they're valued, respected, and protected. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But this isn't about revenge. This is about justice. This is about dignity. This is about proving that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can get back up. You can fight back. You can win. And if my story teaches anything, it's this: you are stronger than you think. You are braver than you believe. And you are never ever alone in this fight. The applause was deafening. Women stood, some crying, all of them clapping and cheering. I saw my mother in the front row, tears streaming down her face, pride shining in her eyes. Beside her, Kayamika was clapping too, not fully understanding but knowing this was important. After the speech, dozens of women lined up to talk to me, to share their stories, to ask for advice. I spoke to each one, giving whatever wisdom and support I could. Because I remembered what it felt like to have no one. To feel invisible and worthless and alone. Never again. Not for me, and not for any woman if I could help it. That night, back in Ibadan, I tucked Kayamika into bed and sat beside her in the darkness. "Mummy," she whispered. "Yes, baby. Are we happy now?" Such a simple question. Such a profound answer. Yes, my love. We're happy now. We're safe. We're loved. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. She smiled and closed her eyes, content. I sat there watching her breathe, this beautiful child who'd been through so much but remained full of light and hope. She was my reason for fighting. My reason for surviving. My reason for refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. On my phone, I had one last message to respond to, from Barrister Folake. "Proud of you. You've come so far. That speech today was incredible." I typed back, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. For fighting for us. For showing me that justice is possible." Her response came quickly. "You did the hard part. You found the courage to speak up. Everything else just followed from that one brave choice." One brave choice. That's all it had taken to change everything. One moment of deciding that I wouldn't accept injustice anymore. That I wouldn't let powerful men define my worth. That I wouldn't let poverty silence my voice. And look where that choice had led. Chike Okafor was in prison, where he'd spend the next 3 decades. His empire was destroyed, his reputation ruined, his crimes exposed for the world to see. The other people who'd hurt me, Mrs. Blessing Nwosu, Samuel, the corrupt officials, all faced consequences. But more importantly, thousands of women had found their voices because I'd found mine. Laws were being changed. Systems were being reformed. The conversation about how society treats divorced women, poor women, struggling mothers, that conversation had shifted. Not enough yet. Never enough while even one woman still suffered. But it was a start. I looked around the small bedroom that Kayamika and I shared, so different from the luxury of our Lekki house, but infinitely more precious. These walls held love and safety and hope. These walls had witnessed our healing. 3 years ago, I'd been thrown off a plane like garbage, humiliated and broken, convinced my life was over. Today, I was a voice for the voiceless. A fighter for justice. A mother who'd protected her child against impossible odds. They'd tried to destroy me. Instead, they'd forged me into something stronger than they could have imagined. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The end. Thank you so much for following Adunni's journey. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story from Stories by Tino. Share this with someone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible, that justice can be won, and that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what part of the story moved you most. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and remember, you are never alone in your fight.